Hello, giving honor to the all-wise God. He's worthy to be praised. Minister Lora Speaight, all my brothers and sisters in Christ, it is another day that the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. And I just thank the Lord for just who He is and just keeping us safe thus far. I wanted to speak just for a little bit regarding family, because at this time in our life, as we're gathered together, minimal social interaction, social distancing, and we're on lockdown, and we're spending more and more time with family. And I just wanted to talk about the family. I want to talk from Genesis, the 27th chapter. I want to read, I'm going to come from Genesis, the 27th chapter, verses 1 through 10, but I want to call your attention to the 5th through the 8th verse. And it reads, And Rebekah spake unto Jacob, her son, saying, Behold, I heard thy father speak unto Esau, thy brother, saying, Bring me some venison, and make me savory meat, that I may eat and bless thee before the Lord before my death. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice according to that which I have commanded thee. And we know the Lord's word has already been blessed. I want to talk for a few minutes about dysfunction in the family. You know, as we know, Isaac is the promised son of Sarah and Abraham. And God had already set the stage, had already promised Abraham that he would be the father of nations, that he would have descendants. And even though Abraham, him and Sarah, devised a plan to help God out, if you will, when she gave Hagar, the handmaid, to Abraham, and we know that Hagar had Ishmael. But, you know, let me tell you something. When you step out of God's will, just like blessings go down through generations, so does curses. And that dysfunctionality, it trickled down through generations and generations. Now we see the promised son, Jacob, the deceiver. His mother, the one who should have been by her husband's side, knowing that he was on his deathbed, devised a plan when he overheard Esau talking to him, wanting to bless him, because we know that the first son was to get 2/3 of the portion of the patriarch's belongings. But Rebekah favored Jacob more. And we know that we shouldn't have a favorite child, but we all admit it, some way or another we do. But anyway, so here's where the dysfunctionality comes in. Rebekah calls Jacob aside, tells him, Oh, I hear your father's telling Esau to fix me some of that venison. Venison, I don't know if you know it, is deer. That stew that I love to eat, so that I can eat it and before I die, so I can bless you. So she devised this plan. You go out and you get me some of this, get a goat, and I'll make this stew. Now, see, here's the thing. Jacob was fair-skinned, and Esau was hairy. So she went even farther to have her to put goat skins on Jacob's hands so that he would be hairy like Esau, because because Isaac's eyes had grown dim, so he couldn't see very good, and that's how he distinguished between his two boys. But he did as his mother said when she said, and you listen to my voice. See, let me tell you something. Dysfunctionality. Never tell your children to do wrong. And you know what? It's not so much different from today. When we talk about dysfunction in the family, talking about how parents will tell their children to do wrong, knowing that it's contrary to what God teaches, what He commands, but yet we do it anyway. And let me tell you something else. The dysfunctional in that family, also, a husband and wife should stand together. There should never be any favoritism. There should always be walking in unity. But as we know, as the story goes, that Jacob stole Esau's birthright. And from the trickling effects, as you know, that made Esau hotter than fish grease. So now he's ready to kill Jacob. Jacob had to run for his life. See how sin trickled down like a big snowball? And it keep making more and more and more problems. So now I got to try to clean this mess up that I made. See, let me tell you something. If someone tell you to do wrong, I don't care who it is, you ought to obey what the Lord tells you to do. It doesn't matter, mother, father, sister, brother. You know, and there's some debate about that. People say, oh, that's my parent, and I'm supposed to obey them because... If they tell you to do wrong, let me tell you something. They're human beings, and people may not agree with that, but I don't believe the Lord wants you to follow anyone and obey anybody that tell you to do blatant wrong. I just don't believe it. I don't believe it. I respect my parents to the highest. But I'm just saying, it is something wrong with parents who would tell their children to do something wrong, knowing they're supposed to lead by example. And I'm here to tell you that there's a lot of dysfunctionality in the families today. And we need to come back to what God say, raise up a child in a way that they should go. And when they're older, they will not depart from their way. Let me tell you something. Let's live the family the way God designed to live. There's patriarchs, and then the matriarch is supposed to be the patriarch's helpmate, not walk under his foot, but beside him, to raise up children, godly children, in the way of the admonition of the Lord. And I'm going to tell you something, when you raise your children in the right way, they'll learn to respect authority. Let me tell you what happens so many times, and I know what I'm talking about. When you raise your children to be defiant, I've heard parents out of my own mouth tell their children, you don't have to listen to this. You don't have to listen to that person. Don't let this teacher tell you this. Don't let that person tell you this. But let me tell you something. What it winds up doing, they don't respect anything. And when you go to school, you wind up having a deviant child. And later on, if they don't respect the school teachers, let me tell you something. When they get out there in the streets, they're not going to respect the legal system. And you're going to either go visit them in jail, or you're going to be saying somebody going to be doing a eulogy over the casket. I'm just trying to tell you about dysfunction in the family. But that ain't what God said. God said we need to walk in the ways of the Lord. It says, oh, children, obey your parent, but obey them in the right way. Obey because they should be teaching you the right way. What Rebecca should have done is to listen and let her husband continue to take the lead because he wasn't dead yet. She should have gave Esau his right as the oldest son because he earned that position that was based on how the Mosaic law was, and God put it that way. See, let me tell you something. We forever try to change the order of things when it ain't ours to change, and we got to stop trying to do that. Let me tell you, just too much dysfunction in the family. We see it a lot of time. Let me bring it up to speed today. When parents of children, and maybe the parent are not together anymore, you hear one parent bashing the other parent. Let me tell you, that's the worst thing you could ever do. I don't care what that significant other or that other partner done, that's still your parent, your other child's parent. And you need to let that child make their own decision. Because when they're older, they can make up their own decision. You don't have to say anything, because when it's over, they will know what their parents done for them. Let me tell you something. My dad did some things, but one thing about it, my mom didn't tear him down. But I know one thing, when we got older, we knew who was there for us, and we knew who stood by us. And I tell you right now, I talk to my father to this day, because he was a provider, but he just wasn't in the home. But let kids make their own decisions once they're grown. Unless it's abuse, let them make their own decision. But don't tear down grown-ups in front of children. Even disputing in the schools. Don't argue and fuss with the teachers in front of your children, because all this does is teaches the children that they can respect teachers and principals. And if they have armed forces in the schools, you cause other problems. But I'm telling you, when you're in the family of Jesus, that's a new family, and Jesus has a definition of family, and it is that we're all bought by the blood of Christ, which means we all have the same Father, and we know that Jesus is our Father because He died. He's our big brother. He died on Calvary, and He paid the ultimate price, that you and I may have a right to the tree of life. Jesus paid it all. And because God is our Father, Jesus is our brother. And let me tell you something. It don't matter. Black, white, purple, brown. We all are our Father's children. That He died on that cross for each and every one of us. So make sure you understand about family. Are you part of God's family? And then when you want to define family, let it be by what God say family is, not what man say family is. It's too much dysfunctionality. And I'm going to tell you something. We got to raise our children as sons and daughters. These are the same sons and daughters that are going to be parents and grandparents and godparents. Be careful who you allow to be your child's godparents and grandparents. Let me tell you something. Make sure you walk in unity, because you can't let one person train them one way and then let someone train them another way. Let it be consistent. Let me tell you the reason you need to do that, because it winds up making children confused. But I'm going to talk about more and more about dysfunctional family. We don't have to be dysfunctional. Let me tell you, there's enough confusion in the world. And I think that God has put us in a place with this lockdown, with this pandemic, to redefine the family according to what God says family is. Fathers need to be fathers. Mothers need to be mothers. Mothers, you don't need to be friends with your daughters. Fathers, you don't need to be homies with your sons. You need to walk in example to be the role model. And that way, you won't have to stand over a casket saying that I was trying to be the friend, because I'd rather him be mad at me, being able to breathe, than looking down crying because I let him get his way. Let me tell you something. You need to dictate where your children go. You need to dictate who their friends are. I'm just trying to tell you. This is to save the children's life. Because if it was more practice of this, there wouldn't be that many children in the grave today. There wouldn't be that many daughters of ours sex trafficking. Haven't been seen in years, don't know where they are. Because they didn't want to listen, develop a rebellious spirit. And let me clarify, some people may have done the best they could. And I know sometimes children are just going to be rebellious. Let me clarify that. I'm not talking about everybody, but so many times kids get rebellious because there are no reins on them. You got to put guidelines on them. Those guidelines that you put on them will save their life. God said, chastise the children. Chastise them. He chastises his children. It says, spare the rod, you spoil the child. Let me tell you something. I got some beat downs. And let me tell you something. It made me turn out all right. I don't believe there's anything wrong with a little tough love. And I got to tell you something. Pain can make you see plain. I'm not talking about abuse, but you got to understand that children today need to know who the father and the mother is. They need to know where children need to stay. I know what I'm talking about because my parents taught us in a way. And I'm going to tell you something. Hey, my parents did a lot of things, but I ain't never, and my mom is dead and gone, never stood up in her face, never thought about cursing her. Didn't like some things she did, but guess what? I kept it to myself. And my dad wasn't in my life, but I've never disrespected him because I was raised that way. And we got to raise our children to know, well, they wasn't a good parent and they wasn't a this, that, you know what? But they deserve the reverence and respect because of who they are. And let the Lord deal with them. And if they're children of God, the Lord will show them the error of their ways. Because God will fix all wrongs. If you was done wrong, and I got some beatings that I didn't deserve, but I also got away with some things that I should have got beat for. I understand all of that. But it don't make me bitter. Matter of fact, it made me better. But I just wanted to talk about dysfunction in the family and use the example of how Rebecca used Jacob to deceive his father. That's just wrong in the eyes of the Lord. And maybe not to that extreme, but it's more of that that's coming than we know. But let us get back together as a parent. And let me tell you something and give you some advice. See, this is different. This is the reason I call this real talk is that this is not sermon. This is just fact and perspective. I believe that if people ever got together, and even if they're not together now, I just believe two people should be civil enough to come together to raise their children the thing that they created together. Even if they don't like each other, even if they've married other people, went on with their life, they ought to be civil enough to talk to each other and to come to some type of agreement to be able to raise their children. Because once you have children together, they need to understand that it's no longer about them. But I wanted to just talk for a few minutes about dysfunction in the family. God is so good. And I thank each and every one of you. And if you don't have Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, you can catch some of these talks, some of the sermons, Sunday at 2:30 p.m. on WGNZ. Twin Ministry broadcast. And I want to thank Brother Ron Short for that opportunity. That's Sunday at 2:30. And then again, Monday at 11 a.m. But I just want to talk for a few minutes about dysfunction in the family from Genesis 27:10. May Jesus continue to be the light of your world, although this world is dark. And may the peace of the Almighty presence and the holy angels of the Lord watch over each and every one of you. I'm Minister Lora Speaight, founder of Twin Ministry, and may God forever keep each and every one of you, and may the peace of Jesus be with you. Thank you.